Hello, I'm Gary Quinn, and welcome to another episode of Ready, Set, Live. My guest today is Matt Adams, a global life and business advisor with an impressive background. He holds an MBA from Harvard Business School and a BA from Princeton University. With 25 years of extensive business experience and a passion for exploring human happiness and success across 57 countries, Matt's professional journey is a testament to his commitment to helping individuals and organizations thrive. Matt is also a Buddhist meditation master with 2 decades of spiritual practice. He has been trained by the greatest Indian, Tibetan, and Western Buddhist masters of our time. Don't go away. We'll be right back with Matt Adams. Welcome to the show, Matt. Wow, what an impressive resume.
Oh, thank you, Gary. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
You know, Matt, a lot of people in the world, not only in business, but in just life, are going through a shift or a change. Would you say it's been very apparent that you've seen more of it at this time in our lives, or has it always been this undercurrent of this energy?
I think, I think that it's the nature of people and civilization to always say that it's a time of upheaval and a time of introspection. But I do think that the moment that we're facing sort of geopolitically with the number of existential threats and the possibility of nuclear war and a lot of great challenges that are in some ways even bigger than JFK dealt with in the Cuban Missile Crisis. These things, I think, have pushed people to consider their own mortality in a way that they haven't before, and with that comes a sort of necessary decrease in living for BS reasons. You know, the typical materialistic, just basic keeping up with the Joneses, that stuff starts to fall apart pretty quickly when you're faced with economic issues, political issues, the political divisions that we've had in the US, the racial divisions, religious issues. Like, there's just so much going on that it makes looking at life more seriously very important. So I think that has pushed people to consider things more deeply than normal. There's also a trend among Gen Z and millennials that they're considered the most unhireable and difficult to keep group in history. But part of that is because they're not really willing to do jobs just for money anymore. And there is a side of that that's entitlement based, that they have sort of an attitude that they don't really need to do things just for money. But it's a double-edged sword, because in one way they're entitled, but in another way they're using that entitlement in order to force employers to create work environments and jobs that have more passion. And so you can blame it on employers, you can blame it on politics, you can blame it on all these things, but at the end of the day, when people are pressed into a corner and requiring more meaning out of life, it's part of the responsibility of employers and of society to answer back and give people more meaning and less sort of canned advertising, canned living.
What was Matt? What was the catalyst that moved you into the spiritual world? Was there a time? I know you were in high finance prior, working in different realms, but was there something that happened or that you felt a need that you switched the gears, or what was the catalyst for you?
That's a good question. We spoke about it a bit when we talked last, but for me, it really was a crisis of having been told my whole life that becoming a banker or a lawyer was the right path, and realizing that it wasn't my dream at all. After graduating with humility, I say this just to answer your question. Top of my class at Princeton, which I adored. I started working for JP Morgan because it was the best job, and high finance is great if you're passionate about finance. I was not particularly, and after working 3 years, 80 to 100 hours a week, uh, great salary, Armani suits, the accolades of my parents and the neighbors saying, "Oh, your son's doing great." But inside it was completely empty because it's not what I wanted to do.
Yeah. No, I think everybody goes through that. And I know more and more individuals are finding their true, authentic voice in business or in just life. And I think you get to a certain age where you feel that there is nothing unless you are true to yourself and really excited about life. Because at the end of the day, you're not taking your, job or your money with you. You're taking the experience
Exactly.
that we have. Would you say that many of the people that you've met or work with, what's their biggest challenges that they're going through, whether it's an organization or an individual running a company? What's been their challenge that you've helped them with?
I think the greatest challenge, the major reason I have a job in the first place is because we're still at a point, although pursuant to your previous questions, we're at a point that there's a greater level of introspection than ever. There is still a pattern among highly successful, highly intelligent people that they're not necessarily following a path that's completely soul satisfying to them. For some of them, that means they've spent a life in high finance and they don't particularly love it except for the money and the power. That can be in entertainment as well. It can be in any industry. For others, they have business success, but they've allowed that to sacrifice their personal happiness. It varies, but ultimately, I think the most common thread I see is highly, highly intelligent people who may be successful, but they're not fully self-actualized and therefore not as happy as they could be.
Mm. Matt, what does love mean to you? If you had to break it down, if someone who asks and they don't know really what it means, what would your interpretation or explanation be?
I would say love is the spontaneous emotion and attitude towards life that arises when you're truly yourself. At a secondary level, love is a manufactured emotion that manufactured real that we feel when we have a great connection to something. But at a higher spiritual level, I think love is ultimately who we really are. Love of ourselves, love of other people, love of animals, life in general. Love and compassion, is our Buddha nature. It's who we really are. But we can't really grab that and access it unless we're fully ourselves. And that's really, I think, the job of a great coach or teacher. And I think why we both do what we do, and why we're successful at it, is helping people to get in touch with the best part of themselves.
Correct. Now, when you were trained by the master in Tibetan and Western Buddhism, what was that sort of peeling back pieces of yourself, or really going introspective on that challenge of really doing that? Because that's amazing work that you do there. What tell me the process, how that happened.
So I started out, I mean, I've been blessed to have lots of superb teachers in Asia, Tibet, Thailand, India, here in the West as well. But it started out with 3 or 4 years back and forth between business and silent practice in Asia, with 6 months, 3 months, on and off in silent retreats with my first teacher. And it was extremely, extremely powerful to spend months on end in complete silence with only the teacher to talk to. And, you know, the first week of silence, you think you're going to go crazy, especially when you're trained in a Western way and to always be talking and to be a very sort of Ivy League type of person. But, you know, after the first couple of weeks, your mind really settles into a different space, and you actually get to a point where you know, coming back to the world becomes the adjustment rather than being in silence.
Would you find that any individual, because I know many people over the years, they tell me they have a hard time to meditate, or they can't really sit still, or they find themselves wandering and then they fall asleep. What would be the tip that if someone who's, let's say, in the business world that really wants to decompress, or maybe just a regular person who wants to really learn how to really go deep, what's the secret that you've learned that you could share?
Number one, be comfortable, not too comfortable lying down. It's too easy to sleep, but be comfortable. Don't be too rigid, so that you're not focusing on pain in your body so much. And most importantly, understand that, especially at the beginning, the entire thing is meditation. So when you're trying to watch your breath, for example, or watching your emotions, it's natural for the mind to run off. And most Western people are so goal-oriented and failure-oriented that the reason they give up and get frustrated is because they think, well, I only watched my breath for 2 minutes and then I was thinking for 10 minutes, so I suck at this and I'm going to stop. It's actually the opposite. It's if you meditate and you only watch your breath for 2 minutes and then you go off for 10 minutes, but you realize it and you come back to your breath, the entire meditation has been successful. And then it's a process of increasing that 2 minutes to a little bit more each time. So you can't really fail as long as you're trying.
You know, I was at dinner at some friend's house last night, and I hadn't seen him in a while, and he told me that he started doing deep meditation, and he has this whole setup graphically in his office where there's an energy. It's like you're watching a visual where the energy goes up through his body and meditates. But he said, you know, he's a successful Emmy-winning graphic artist for the movies and TV, and he found that when he started meditating, that more work came in as opposed to the work not really being as, let's say, plentiful for him in the last 7 months. I mean, he's always worked, but when he just sort of didn't care anymore, he wasn't chasing the dream of having to do something. He just said, this is what I do. I'm good at it. And he said with the meditation, and I said to him, well, your intuition has also opened up energetically wise. So would you say that's really one of the byproducts that happens when you start to really get into the meditation?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think that comes back to what I mentioned earlier about helping people to get in touch with their Buddha nature allows them to unlock pieces of themselves that they've never been in touch with before. And when they get in touch with those pieces of themselves, by definition, they're attracting more work, better work, switching jobs. You know, as you become more authentically yourself, your whole universe changes. from your relationships to your professional, whatever. So, I mean, that's the art of being a great coach and a great teacher, in my opinion, is not necessarily conveying some kind of truth to other people, but helping them get in touch with exactly what you're saying, which is the highest truth within themselves.
Yeah, what I've noticed, is many people have been all over the world have been changing, becoming a bit more connected to a path of some type of spiritual growth. But I feel that there's still that little voice or that fear that's inside of them that keeps them, let's say, from having breakthrough moments and not really moving forward in a, they're breaking down instead of having breakthrough moments in their lives. And I think the confidence level is what is really, when you do something enough, it's repetition. Your subconscious allows that to really align with that joy or that, empathy for life, and really knowing that the gratitude is so important. Would you say gratitude is a really main component in the work that you do?
Huge, huge. Gratitude. I mean, gratitude. Look, the path is it's not always easy. I think a lot of people break down right before they break through. And that's because it's hard to level up. It's hard to let go of bad habits. It's hard to let go of addictions. And addictions is not necessarily drugs and alcohol. Addiction can be to other people's opinion, most primarily. And when we change and get better, a lot of times we need to let go of other people or change the nature of our relationships. And sometimes that's just too hard. And so we stay small in order to keep our world the same. And when we're in those moments of sort of stepping up into a greater level of ourselves and everything seems shaky and rocky, gratitude for the good things in our life and gratitude for the simple things is really what keeps us rooted. And, it seems cliched in some sense, but there's always someone worse off and going through a harder time. So it's so important to be able to step out of oneself and one's issues and challenges and, use gratitude for what we do have to extend a helping hand and love and compassion to somebody else. And through that helping of other people, that gratitude and kindness, we recharge ourselves, and that helps us have more energy to break through our challenges.
And you said an important thing, kindness. I mean, how would a person from any walk of life, business or just on a spiritual journey, what would be some practice to be able to practice gratitude and kindness when their life is really not really where they want it to be, or they're searching, or they're into burnout, or they've been overwhelmed by their business that's not working? What would be their first suggestion, you would say, to practice more gratitude and kindness?
I think that's exactly the moment when people need to. My own experiences, the worst times in my life are when I really needed to push myself to do anything, be it go volunteer at an animal shelter, at a soup kitchen, sick kids in a hospital, the elderly, like do anything that will get you out of your own head. Giving to other people in any sense of the word is one of the fastest cures to depression. And, unfortunately, we live in a very self-driven society where it's easy to get stuck in patterns where we're sort of entitled and enabled to focus really heavily on what's going wrong in our lives. And, rather than continue to talk to the, you know, it's great to get therapy. It's great to talk our problems out, but too much self-focus just leaves us stuck in the mud. And, you know, I really, really counsel my clients who are going through difficult moments to immediately do something for somebody else.
Yes, I think also, would you say that's a factor also with someone who's depressed or has these depression cycles?
Yeah, and you know, I've been there before, particularly because I used to have a pretty nasty alcohol problem, which creates a lot of depression. Um, yeah, you know, the last thing you want to do when you're depressed is the last thing you feel like doing is being jovial in any way, and you don't particularly feel like helping other people. But there's, you know, Jordan Peterson, the clinical psychologist, talks a lot about how there's something wired in your brain that when you face a huge challenge and overcome it, it actually rewards your dopamine system extremely heavily. So it wires your brain to want to do it again. And one of the biggest things that he talks about is doing, you know, altruistic things when you're depressed to sort of bypass the depression circuitry.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think also, everything is based on each individual is going through their own, let's say, journey in this school that we live in of life and spirituality, and whether they bring in faith or they bring in holistic, energy, or whether it's Buddha,
Yes.
Kuan Yin, God, Jesus, angels, whatever. I believe that they're at least making some opening for themselves to create change. And I think if you're not changing, you're not really living. But I believe if you have life, you have purpose. And I think that's the most important thing. What would you leave our listeners and viewers with some words of wisdom that you would give them to prepare for 2025? What would be something that you would say, okay, this is what you need to all do in this lifetime?
Well, I would say you're off to a good start if you're listening to this in the first place. And if I would take anything from it, I would say that I have been myself through experiences and moments that I never ever thought that I would get out of, emotionally, mentally, psychologically, financially, addiction wise, whatever. And here I am living the life of my dreams, talking to an amazing person such as yourself, who's also living his dream, helping people. So I would say just keep going. Don't expect things to get easier. Next year is going to be full of challenges like any other year, but you can do it. And focus on what Gary just said, is that focus on creating connection in your life. Connection to anything. You want to call it God, the universe, the Buddha, anything at all, nature, dogs, it doesn't really matter. Focus on anything greater than yourself, and just keep on going and believe that you can live your dream.
Thank you so much, Matt, for spending this time with me. You are brilliant. I can't wait to meet you finally in person. But I wish you the best and keep doing the great work that you're doing. And thank you for joining me on this special edition of Ready, Set, Live.
Thanks so much, Gary. I appreciate you very much.
I'm Gary Quinn. Join me for another episode of Ready, Set, Live. Until next time, be well.